Hello to everyone. Oh, it's not this Google, it's this Google. It is Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and as you can see, this is Venus Day, Jupiter hour just began, and the ascendant is with Keto, while the moon is entering its eclipse shade. We are just 20 minutes from the moon. No, 20 minutes. Yeah, math during retrograde Mercury. Mm-mm. But we are very close to the moon, reaching the degree of its eclipse in Scorpio. And I would like to do, as you see me doing this very special eclipses lives, my special eclipse wisdom for this episode is the cycle of 18 years. And this episode is called 17 years for a reason. So basically, the nodes that trigger the eclipses of the moon and the sun, they change sign. The nodes of the moon, they change sign. They cycle through the zodiac until they return to the same point for around 18 years. And the reason I call this episode 17 years is basically because the nodes are about to go into Aries, and they will be in Aries in about a year. So less than a year, but they will be in Aries. This is the last eclipse on the Scorpio Taurus one. And we already opened the eclipses in Aries. And so we can say we have had 17 years to let go, digest, process, have a whole life story about what happens until the nodes reach Aries. And this is the wisdom for today. So Jupiter is sitting pretty right on the Mercury, is the ruler of my 7th and 4th. And I was just reminded that, for my life, I've had 17 years to digest what was going on. And one more year, the nodes will be right on this Mercury ruler of my 4th and 7th. So for me, this symbolizes things to do with partnership, with housing, with self-sustainability, with my skills, my value, my creativity as well, and so on and so forth. For you, it may mean other things, and the wisdom of this particular episode that is probably going to lead us very close to the exact eclipse. So if you're having a hard time to stay up, or hard time to sleep, or hard time to function, come in, watch this episode, and stay with me. If it calms you, if it helps you, if it is like a stranger witness through the experience, then you can absolutely watch this episode. And what I'm going to talk about right now in this live eclipse show is basically the nodes and the 18-year cycle of the nodes. So in Scorpio Taurus, we have been wrapping an 18 years cycle right now. So right now, this is the last eclipse. This is the 18 years cycle of since the last time Rahu was in Taurus. And we are in 2023, so 20 years would be 2000, and 18 years would be 2005. So what was happening for me in 2005? I started my grown-up job, and I was probably working in productions, kind of volunteering productions, student productions. I was writing screenplays. Yeah, this is like all these things happening. So that was a part of the cycle. So I graduated from both high school, and I think I had to take a break from university because I didn't have funding for it. And so I began to apply, began to work on student productions and write screenplays, and actually began to be interviewed, to be not working because I didn't get paid back then, but basically producing and writing and filming and being a part of that which I've learned for back then. It was since age 14. So since age 14, the math, like, it's difficult now. Um, and then at that cycle between 2006 then 2007, I will change my residence, and basically move to the city which I live in right now, which is a village, before uni. So it was in between not having money for university to moving to a bigger city and then being in a complete crisis that will lend me an option to have funding for university, because my, you know, the box. It's like you have to be a bit sick in order to be healthy. Ah. So, a lot of us are wrapping up this 18-year cycle. And as we are wrapping this 18-year cycle, there is also one more year around, okay? One more year where we are beginning to wrap up the next 18-year cycle. So 9 years is the reversal of the nodes. Okay, 9 years, we are in 2023. 9 plus 4 makes it so the 2014. Okay, and for me, 2014, I was finishing my first degree and about to hit the second. And the crazy things I did to be able to pay for the first installment for the second degree, and then became a TA, which was being back to the work market as more than an English tutor. So, and unfortunately, will later mean being me too veteran, but that was me graduating from university, from the first degree, and going right to the second. Okay, 2014, then 2015, 2016, when I would be a Me Too veteran. And so that was the reversal of the nodes. So Rahu was with Scorpio. So I was finishing the degree. Okay, I was finishing the first degree. And then I was actually applying and being accepted and being TA of 3 courses in the second degree. So I didn't think about it. That was the time when I was actually beginning my second degree. So I think, oh, I finished my first. No, I began my second degree. That was 9 years ago. But 18 years ago, I did not have money to study in university filmmaking, which I guess was fortunate, because to be Me Too victim back then would be too much. And it was filmmaking, mind you. And yes, there were people. Like, I sat in front of a person who was a famous director, famous Israeli director, very talented, but unfortunately, he was also sexually harassing, and I didn't know it. And like, I sat in front of his house, I presented in front of him, and I was going voluntarily to that course, because I was going to every course I could go voluntarily, to learn more and more. Okay, so to have more and more experience in filmmaking. So imagine that, right? And then that was 18 years ago. I didn't have the money to study. And then 9 years ago, I was making the money to study, from being a TA, and doing volunteering then, and having welfare, like all of these 3 together. So imagine people that don't have at least one of the 2, they're like in danger of human trafficking already. With the promise that they will somehow find a jobby job and be treated okay, as if that ever happens. So you have to think not only 9 years backwards, because 9 years, if I take it 18 years, I was beginning to do applied. Okay, I didn't have money to study, and so I was working on student productions, doing filmmaking, writing screenplays, and then 9 years later, I was not beginning my first degree, but beginning my second degree. Okay, so the first degree, it was like it was a given. I was beginning my second degree. And now it was more about applying things that I've learned with this eclipse cycle. Okay, the eclipse began to be on Algol. I was called to work with Algol, and I was given this. I was having this thing that was all like almost like a psychic attack, or people say psychosis or whatnot. It's like, now you begin to apply what you've learned. And I was taking step by step to apply what I learned, and I had to apply it in my life. which was very difficult. I was in 6 months long meditation that I was solely channeling, and uh, wow, I'm still processing it, and I'm still have channeling. Um, so that was, if I take it 18 years backwards, then I was doing screenplays. I was writing screenplays that are being filmed, that are being shot. I was working on student productions. So I didn't have money to go to university, but I did the work. And here I couldn't go to university simply because, or I couldn't write my thesis because it was about medical, like the medical field, and I wanted to have some experience, at least in something that I can apply with the medical field, and that was aromatherapy on a holistic level, because like it cannot be that I write about medicine and I don't do medicine. It doesn't make sense for the type of thesis that I was writing, that was philosophy of science and the epistemic view on the body mind question in all of the medicines, kind of trying to infer it from meta analysis. So I got into like the everything of it, but I had to see if something works. Like if it doesn't work with experiment, then it doesn't apply. And so I'm wrapping up this cycle, and you've seen my previous video of do it by feet. And so I'm wrapping up this cycle of applying hands-on experience before I can write a word, an academic word about it. And of course, also I was a Me Too veteran on the way, like, side effect. Um, so there is the things to do with the third house and the ninth house with higher studies. So I was learning screenwriting, um, I was self-taught also in holistic medicine. Okay, the fact that I took a course in aromatherapy, that's not what makes me a healer. It's basically the fact that I learned about it, and I learned about it self-taught before I took any certification. So, of course, the certification is important. I know what oils are damaging and what oils are good for certain, type of, if you have high blood pressure, then you don't want to use cereals, or you don't want to use like rosemary, or if you have a baby, then you don't want to put mint because the baby can die of the cold effect. So it's important, like it's quite important to know that. But other than that, the whole holistic view of how to tend to a situation that a person comes with, including me, because you are the first person that you tend to when you study this. I had to learn this by myself. They don't teach you that. There's even when you do practicum, they don't teach you that. Now, remember when I did practicum, I got to the bottom of the issue, but then my instructor would tell me, and rightfully so, there is a process to go through. Okay, there's a process to go through. If you tell them that, it's not that you're wrong, but they don't see it how you see it, so they'll not, you can't get through to them. You just shock them, and when I made an experiment with my friend, I did shock them. I did shock them. Um, so that's something you need to learn how to do, and that was where I went from being an academic to being an intern, basically. Okay, because that's what happened. You study all these years and then you're an intern. Same happened with screenwriter. I was learning how to do. I was writing since age 11. I was learning how to do screenwriting since age 14, and then it was application time. It was decision time. It was application time. It was literally writing screenplays that are going to be filmed. And the first time I did it was in high school, and it took me, I think, 4 or 5 screenplays that I wrote before I got them approved for filming, because they were not realistic in the sense that we did not have the equipment and the ability to produce this production for high school students. And so later I began to be involved in actual productions. So that was it was, and it came through a crisis, because the Scorpio is a crisis. So it was a crisis. I did not have money to finish school, but oh, what Rahu was bringing. And so this year again, I did not have the ability to pursue on with the internship, with the practicum, um, and I was going through a certain crisis myself. And literally, my instructor told me, like, you're going to help people in such and such situations, but there are things you need to go through yourself. There are things you need to heal in yourself, and that sounded very logical. but I did not imagine what is to be. I did not imagine that it would have to do with all that deep, like it was going to be all that deep. I did not imagine it's going to be all that deep because I did not imagine when I looked at my what I studied, I looked at it as something that's complementary to going to the doctor. I did not see it the way I would see it today, or that I would have the courage to speak about it and all these issues that I talk about with beta blockers and all that. Um, so I did not imagine when I was writing my thesis proposal, and I remember at one essay that was unrelated, I said, because in the beginning you are diagnosed with either borderline or bipolar, you don't really know what's up with you, you don't really know what's up with you. And I said, I believe that this thing can be healed and it's considered something chronic. I said, I believe this thing can be healed. I don't succumb to the fact that I limit my perception of the ability to be healed. And little did I know that I would be me too veteran, that my CPTSD would be triggered, that I would be treated with the wrong pills, that I would find out about open dialogue, that I would find out about holistic medicine, that I would be in a situation that certain pills were given to me and I had nobody. No, the social worker was in a vacation. Nobody was there. The friend that I was sharing an apartment with, it was with his parents, and all there was just me, and channeling what it was that I channeled. I even had a friend that was channeler, and she gave me things, and that was not apply. Nothing was applicable. I had to find inner voice and heal myself. It was literally like the shaman journey, kind of like the two spirit, the shaman journey. That, but without the culture of where you have a shaman, where you have a dream, you have a calling, and then you tell this to people, and the shaman takes you and trains you, which is also problematic. As a person who was hurt by the psychologist, then it's also problematic method to be and to do. I think it's way more important to talk about the structure of training shamanic people and shamans in a tribe where there is only one shaman and only one shaman training them, and what if something goes wrong there. That is more important than to talk about cultural appropriation when gender fluid people call themselves true spirit. Like that is, I'm less bothered about that than about this thing which I said. So I did not imagine that where that would take me, because that have been like a taboo. It's like, okay, maybe these pills don't work for me because the side effect affect me, and there's a lot of gaslighting, but I did not imagine that the, all the things that I would find out, that I've been talking about it a lot. So this is the 18-year cycle that I've been kind of wrapping up. Okay, first applying screenwriting and being a part of the filmmaking industry, um, and then that would lead to the upcoming cycle of Aries, where I had a crisis in my personal life, and I'm like, okay, life is not a screenplay. Okay, I was applying screenplays, like life is not a screenplay. And I don't know anything about life, about relationships, about like any of that. I don't have these skills. I isolated myself to learn how to make movies, but the movies touch the reality. Um, and when I think about it, I think I recently saw the song by Darren Hayes. That's called "It Feels Like It's Over." And when he posted it on Instagram, he said, never before had life imitated art so much. And that's like, if you know the story for Darren Hayes, if you're a Darren Hayes fan, then you know. If you don't, then I'm not going to, like, he's a very private person, and I don't want to take the voice away from anybody. But I was thinking about this notion about how life imitates art, and this connection between the films that we create, or the songs that we write, or the creation, and our personal life. Whether it's life imitating art, or whether it is closing yourself to write so much so that you close yourself to life, which was what happened to me 18 years ago. And this episode is named 17 years because next year is one more year that Rahu will hit Mercury, this is the ruler of my 7th and 4th, in an eclipse cycle. And this is where I want to encourage you to think about not only the 18 years that you are wrapping up with this Taurus Scorpio axis, For you, okay, for me, it also meant during the eclipses and with Ghetto in Scorpio that I was in Netherlands for almost 3 months. So the abroad that was also my fatherland, that is also my fatherland, and how Keto in a sign does not necessarily mean you're not going to experience Keto, but that you are purging something, so you will visit this house, especially when Venus was with Keto, and now we will have Mars with Keto. Okay, so we are revisiting something to purge, to let go, to grow, and to pay emphasis on the new, to apply the new. Um, so for me, the do it by feet is such, with Jupiter here on my Mercury, it's such a big deal. Okay, and how this brought certain hope, certain open windows, certain open opportunities um, to see life in general. This was also the time where I started applying astrology, like feeling the astrology quite deeply and working also magically with astrology for me. Um, and now we are heading into this, to wrapping up the 18-year cycle that is related with the Aries Libra axis. So for me, I know a part of it will be me having an income of my own that is probably independent from the government, which is a blessing. I just don't see it how it happens right now. I don't see it right now. But I have a lot of hope because there's a lot of structure in my life that is changing even within my body. Okay, the structure of my toes, tending to myself in different ways. So finding new opportunities, changing things, speaking up about things I didn't speak about before. And so that also has to do with partnership for me. That also has to do with owning an estate and with dealing with my Chiron that is already being conjuncted by Sedna. So Sedna is a lot about meridians, and that's pretty much, other than the myth, is all I know about her. Um, and so uh, those issues are coming up, and and what I've had, like I literally had this song. I don't know if I'll get to sing it. And that was something I planned for the eclipse. That was called 17 years. Just of the 17 years that I've had to, or we've had to let go of, or to try many things in our life, whether it's our love or creativity, our relationship, building a home, and how one more year the moon will strike again. Okay, there was going to be a solar eclipse again and a lunar eclipse again on this axis that we've now had 17 years to let go of. So a lot of us are having tremendous endings right as we speak. Okay, right as we speak. I want to do the current planets again so I get to. And this is Jupiter hour. Okay. I also want to say a deep, deep thank you to Astro Victor for putting out his he put out the game that views challenging aspects, in this case between Pluto and Jupiter, and how we can see them in a different way. So we are being called, let's say, to transform our beliefs into beliefs that are more supportive for our journey. Or we are called to transform our view on children, on semen, or on the bringer of semen. Okay, so men in this case, or women with the penis. That can also be the case, um, and how we tackle these hard aspects, these challenging aspects, and change our point of view about them. And I think the Shade of an Eclipse is a great time to do it. So deep thank you to Astro Victor. You can hop onto his channel and you've seen the community, the posts that he had. And that I find a very important practice to deal with. It's not that we have to ignore a hard aspect or we have to disacknowledge that there is challenge, but eventually we do need to tackle this challenge and we do need to change the way we see things so that the things we look at change, and to act on these from a new perspective so that we can create this new innovation in our life. And now with Venus day, Jupiter hour in here is getting ready to be evening. The moon is just 1 degree away from the eclipse, the punktlich eclipse. And so it's time to begin to think about the first of all, now it's time to wrap up the 17 years. Because what we are letting go of now in our Scorpio house and Taurus house, okay, bringing in the new is about making a gap where the new can come. So we think about the new, we envision the new, we see the new, and then we take all of our baggage out so that the new can come here and manifest in the physical. Okay? And that's a part of the process in many cases. So you make way. And right now, as we are wrapping these 18 years, we're also wrapping the 17 years that lead us to the one more year, and the books will open again, and the moon will strike again in this Aries point in our lives. And so, um, for the Aries Libra, okay, what we have been letting go of in the previous eclipse cycle is wrapping up 17 years of baggage that we're letting go of so that we can open up a new page again. And I want to thank Ethereal Astrology for her own eclipse video. And when she mentioned the Mercury retrograde in Taurus, that it's like it's not so good for us to go back or reconcile in the physical or go back to the situation where this Mercury retrograde symbols for us, because this is an eclipse cycle and it is the time to permanently let go. Okay, Saturn ties completely. This is what Scorpio rules, and this interesting reception. This is again this mutual reception, the teaching of ethereal astrology that she referred to. Mars being in Cancer, ruled by the moon, and the moon being in Mars sign. So this interesting reception, they're both aware they don't like to be. It's all her words, and they begin to join forces together to let go of this baggage, so that both of them will have a new beginning. Okay, and so this new beginning will be marked by the nodes that strike again with Aries. And so the new beginning is not only in the Taurus related, it's the new beginning by the merit of Taurus, but it's also, there's something you're applying or something you're doing in your Taurus house that is now, that is already in action. You've already started it because it's eclipse cycle. We also had a solar eclipse in Taurus, and you're already doing it. And the first solar eclipse in the 29 degrees of Aries is already being here. Okay, you're already in that new beginning. Now you're just wrapping up the past because you are already in that new beginning. For the people, because it's eclipse cycles ruled by Mars and Venus, and it's like, penis and vagina, and the people who have penis and vagina. So it's relations, separations, penetrations, unions, and finance, and jeder krank of them, complex, as the song goes by Georg Kreisler. So Sex und jeder krank auf dem Komplex. So this is, for many people, it can actually mean that you've already met in spirit or in matter the new. You've already met them, but there are 17 years that you have to wrap up so that you can either meet them in the physical or commune with them, or to actually commit. And so this is of this eclipse cycle, this is the one I would be suspecting of the most for the type of relationships. And be mindful of the Neptune influence here, because Venus is squaring Neptune. So this one is not the time, but this entire 6-year cycle is the cycle that I would be most suspicious of for the type of partnership where you have whether it's business or romantic, you have one partner slowly dissipating, and then you see that that partner married another partner or partnered up with another partner, and you can kind of like grow bitter or grow this or grow that, and you expect to see that falling apart, and that actually doesn't. And the reason being is that we've had an eclipse cycle with, for the people for whom any of this is relating to the fifth and seventh, um, we've had Venus with Keto in the eclipse cycle of Mars and Scorpio, Mars and Venus on Scorpio, Taurus. And now we have the flip side with Mars is going to be with this Keto. Okay, so there's a lot of letting go. It's both the eclipse cycle that where every new relationship that begins here, I would say, unless you are born under eclipses, which happens for people who are born under eclipse, they will anyhow marry around an eclipse. And I think um, I have his face as a Twitter user that I thank for this insight, but I don't have the name. I have his face. So is writing great, great stuff. I know we both have Venus in Taurus, but that's all I remember. So it's about the eclipse cycle that I suspect that if it's relationship involved, you will have the most um, um, transformation. That can be confusion, that can be transformation, and it can be the kind of couple that is there for a couple of years, and then they grow and learn about themselves, and then they separate. So it's like it was a very important relationship, and Uranus is also very much involved. Okay, all the other planets are here. So the kind of coupleships and partnerships that are forming are the type of coupleships and partnerships that will change the face of reality in trade, in business, in the way we conceptualize relationship, the seventh, the fifth, birth giving. Okay, children very much involved as well with Jupiter here. And as well as it can actually be the type of those relationship of the long lasting kind, which can be with Uranus here sextiling the nodes, Uranus and with Saturn in Pisces sextiling the nodes, it can be that can actually be the type of it can be the type of partners that can leave somebody bitter, because it's the kind of, I can say, if I go back to 2007. So we were in a couple of, like people hanging out virtually and so on and so forth. And one of the people was marrying someone new. And that someone, when I knew them both, and that someone was telling me he was married for, I think, 13 years. And he told me that when he was young, he did not choose to commit. And then came this lovely young woman that was presenting him with a choice, and now he finally felt that he is choosing. I don't know if that relationship lasted or not, um, but those are the kind of situations that can be created with this eclipse cycle. Okay, those are the kind of situations where there generally was something that was not answered in the previous long-term relationship, and the only way out is a new relationship with these good foundations. And Saturn links us to foundations. Okay, so there are new foundations related to this issue. Um, and so it can be the case where you leave a long-term relationship or a relationship that existed, or even not a long-term relationship, although with Saturn it can be, and you're like the new person that it might be there before you leave completely the that person. So the release that you are having now can be even more emotional than in the physical. Like it can be that the next eclipse or the eclipse with Aries is actually going to be in the physical, because if the seventh house, let's say it's Libra and your ascendant Aries, then it can be that now you are wrapping up, and then you will have the actual breakup. Now you have this emotional letting go, and then you will have the actual breakup. Or the other way around. Maybe you've had the actual breakup when Ketu was with Sagittarius. Again, suddenly you had this actual breakup, and now you're just processing the emotion of it, and then you're going to be alone for a while, but you're going to build foundations. Especially if you're on the Taurus Aries, then you probably are going to focus on yourself more, and then it will take some 9 years before you are fully committed. It doesn't mean that you won't have relationships. Like I have Pisces ascendant, I'm closer to the Taurus Aries, but the ruler of my seventh and fourth is in Aries. Yes, in the second house. So I'm not unlikely to be in a situation where I'm in a partnership. So those things can come up, and it's both the time where any person that you meet right now can serve a certain purpose of growth and liberation that might overwhelm the other concerns for long-term relationship if that's what you're looking for in your life. The other way around is that you do meet that person who is the good foundations, and you're going to meet him as of next year, or her as of next year, or them, and or maybe already have met. And it can be the type of situation where what you're letting go of now in this eclipse is more the emotional baggage rather than the actual relationship. And it can be the kind of situation where people are having someone that looks like a side chick, side boy, side this, that actually becomes the spouse, and for a good reason. Now, because this is so confusing, there are going to be a lot of in-betweens with this involvement of Venus and Neptune, that you're going to think you found the love of your life, but you actually are going to do the Uranus growth, or that you think that that this is just an occasional, a flare, and you find out that there's more, that this is actually foundational in a way that you hadn't been expecting. So if I think about the one couple that comes to my mind, I didn't do the chart, is Gwen Stefani and Blake Shelton. The both of them were met when they were divorcing, and in the process of being divorced, and then they thought that they are going to be each other's rebound. And a decade later, I don't know how long have they been together, they build a house together, and now they're having these beautiful videos of them with the farm planting things, and planting strawberries or whatnot. So that's really lovely. So all these possibilities can happen. Because it is Venus Mars, it's very likely to be relational. Because Jupiter is related, faith is important. The worldview, the religion. Okay, so bridging religious differences, complementary religion practices, the place of spirit in your life, your life philosophy, compatible life philosophies that are needed for having a long-term relationship. And this juncture with Pluto. So how do we relate to Pluto? How do we go through Plutonian transformations in a way that's actually happy and supportive for us? Um, so this placement of the crisis, or the potential of a crisis, the Uranus. Okay, the Uranus point that is basically leading us to rebellious streaks, to revolutionary, to liberational. We are on the degree. We have entered eclipse zone. Okay, Jupiter hour. I like it that this eclipse is in a Jupiter hour. The previous one was on a Jupiter day, and I think also Jupiter hour. Okay, Jupiter, 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 Jupiter. Okay, so big Jupiter vibes. Some people would say big D vibes, but that is another point with this hard aspect of Mars and Jupiter. Naya. But even let's say this is the case, then okay, how would you view that in a way that is positive? Okay, how would you view that in a way that's actually supportive? How would you view that when you radically accept yourselves, and be authentic, and whatnot? It's like what's the optimistic view of this? What can you do? How can you grow? Where can you put the focus to grow it where you want to grow it? Where it's actually benefic for you. So Venus on my Juno. Okay, Rao on my Venus, Venus on my Juno. Venus was no, Mars was on my moon in the previous eclipse. With Venus, I don't remember. I think she was around Aldebaran, so in my fourth house, and no, it was on my Venus. So now this eclipse, Yes, and Jupiter here. Yeah, a degree separating from my Mercury, ruler of the seventh and fifth, and fourth, and the moon is separating from my Saturn, but is applying to my sun. I'm gonna have a solar return in just a couple of hours. Okay, I'm gonna be 39. Woohoo! Um, and so, as we are wrapping up these 17 years that we are letting go of things, we are basically making our whatever we had. For me, it's especially personal because I've Saturn in the ninth, and whatever rigid views I've had on relationships, beliefs, blah blah blah, and all these dogmatic things, I'm learning to let go of. Okay, like the most one of the most consensual sexes that I've had was with the married man that was my psychologist at the time I was his patient. Get the Shabbos. And it's like, and then of course what made him violent towards me was not me even rejecting him, but I just wanted to hold my stuffy and explore my non-sexual side, and that was triggering something that made him violent towards me. I was like, why? No reason. Not that there is ever a reason, but that was like, oh, if I would not, like Shirley 18 years ago would not predict that her experience of consensual sexuality will be in these crazy circumstances. Definitely not what would happen afterwards. So it's about the learning that consensual sex is found in various places, and that there is no justification for violence at any case, even if you are a married couple and have been having good sex together for years. There is no justification ever to cross the sexual boundaries of another, and there has to be certain structures that support people going to another place, people relaxing without them being in life danger of losing their life, their love, their job, their status, their this, their that, and all that dependent on whether they are or aren't with the partner. So all of these things together. And for you, it may be in various other aspects in your life. There are certain, because we're opening up an 18-year cycle in Aries, there are certain dogmas that you are saying goodbye to. It can be both certain standards that you didn't set. Okay, so now you're focusing on you more, and if you're closer in your ascendant to the Taurus, to the Aries, to a lesser degree Pisces and Gemini, you might be spending quite some time alone. And I thank ethereal astrology for that. She was pointing this out, and this is absolutely true. I absolutely agree with this prediction. And then again, and if you are like me and you have suddenly the ruler of the seventh and fourth in this, so it can actually be the case that you're letting go of, and the new is coming way more quicker than you expected. And for that reason, if that is the case for you, you may have been wrapping up and letting go of more than you think you could possibly deal with. I know I have had this situation where I said, okay, maybe these are the last hours of my life, and if they are, what am I doing right now in these very hours? And this is how I sustained through literally the days before the eclipse. And one of the people that I really love and appreciate their art was suddenly coming up with these weird posts that we did not know how to interpret, and I thought maybe maybe they're gone. Fortunately, they are with us. So uh, that was the kind of feel, and it can actually mean that you are just letting go of way more, because this new beginning for you is not in 9 years, but is actually in a year or so, or may have already begun. And that is something that you also need to be informed, and you also need to understand, because that can give you a sense of meaning and purpose. It's like, this is not death, this is actually the beginning of a new life that is more sustainable for you, that is more true to who you are today, that is more in alignment with your sensual boundaries and your sexual boundaries and your intimacy, the true nature of your intimacy, as well as your sense of self, Aries, and your initiations and goals in life, and you let go of balance for the sake of balance and pleasing for the sake of harmony, in favor of authentically asserting yourself. And do like Aries is literally ruled by Mars, literally doing you for a while, and so that can strike up this brand new beginning that can be quite sudden and ecliptic in nature, especially if you're being born under eclipses. You're the type of people who will have those eclipse weddings, and that's important to know. Okay, um, so 17 years. And this episode is named 17 years because of the 17 years that we've been wrapping up our our lives, basically. And as the nodes are going to have a nodal return from the time we've had Rahu in Aries, that now is already 18 years ago. Okay, because we already had a solar eclipse in April. We already had a solar eclipse, the first solar eclipse in April. So we already began this new cycle of 18 years. And so this is 18 years and 17 years because of what is to come. And with the nodes arriving to Aries, they will arrive to Aries in 2024, I believe, or maybe also already 2023. Um, the nodes arrive to Aries, and the moon strikes again. And the book, for me, the book of love, for you probably also the book of love, because it's Venus and Mars and which is Jupiter. The book of love opens. The book of love is evergreen. Okay, and so what was true through the entire 18 years is wrapping up. So life, your choices, the way you live your life, the way you see the world, is no longer the way it was. So that can be for you, for some of you, that was 17 years of a partnership, of a relationship. And for some of you, that was 18 years of actually being single. And I've had, I'm not going to say names because like I don't like to take the voices of the person when it's their private life, but I've had cases where I've seen even colleagues of mine um, ending a cycle of so many years alone, and suddenly they're seeing someone. And this is so exciting, right? It's like, oh, you've been along all this time, or you've been in relationships that are not really relationships all this time, and now some, like the book of love is going to strike again, and so there's a total new beginning, a complete, utter, total new beginning that alters the course of 2 decades. Well, Pluto, guess what is going to be doing for the next decades, is going to be in Aquarius for the next 2 decades. The couples that are forming up, especially with these eclipses, around these eclipses, because of the involvement of all the three outer planets, are going to be the couples that are going to change the world in the next 2 decades. So if you think about the previous 2 decades, and I'm thinking about Pluto in Capricorn and some Pluto in Sag, we've had interracial LGBTQ weddings. Okay, towards the end of the cycle, it was 2015. We began to have these LGBTQ weddings being approved and legislated and allowed and supported by the regime. And we've had a lot of couples fighting for this. And now, or we've had people discussing also birth, adoption. Should they go to a person that gives birth for the baby and then delivers the baby to them? Should they not? And all these things that are also to do with having, family, having this, having that, having children, Jupiter, birth giving. We've had a discussion over natural birth, not natural birth, and the mix that is being done, where we do need medical help even if we do give natural birth. It's like we're not out. We will not say no to medicine because we chose to embrace ourselves and our bodies. We're just choosing to have more agency in our birth giving and also in death processes. if I talk about the sarcopag that is about to be launched in Switzerland, or people ending life respectfully and flying to Switzerland. And unfortunately, this is only for the wealthy. So those type of questions, okay, that are legislations around birth, death, marriage, raising children, growing children, and so on and so forth. So all this was Pluto in Capricorn, and to some extent a bit of Pluto in Sagittarius. Those were our religious beliefs. Now we're having 2 decades of Pluto in Aquarius, and Pluto's Aquarius is the people. And there are new conundrums. And so the couples that will be forming during these pivotal times, especially during this eclipse cycle, and as we will approach to Pisces, it will also integrate Jupiter and Mercury, so especially children, and the philosophical type of coupling, because Jupiter is also the spouse. Um, those type of couples are going to be facing and changing the world for the next 20 years. So the changes that you fought for as couples or as single people in the last 20 years, you have had achievement, and now for the next 20 years there are new conundrums, and the coupleships that are going to be formed are going to be unique, are going to be unusual, and are going to bring us the changes of the next Pluto cycle in Aquarius. Literally, when the moon is in the seventh house, aligns with Mars, the age of Aquarius, it's literally that. But now it's just the moon is in the first house. But yeah, so that's that's the excitement going on. This is why the relationships that are ending are ending. The people that are ending their singleness are ending their singleness. The people that are perhaps beginning their singleness, it's not going to be necessarily for 18 years. Don't worry about it. You're probably not going to be single for 18 years. It's highly unlikely. What is more likely, though, is that you're going to spend some time alone if you're closer to the Aries Taurus, unless you have the ruler of your fifth or seventh in these houses, or Jupiter or Venus or Mars. Okay, this can be the case, and then you're hardly ever alone in general. But you're learning to have, perhaps the new relationship will be meeting your needs more so than the partner. This has the potential to happen. And so for a lot of you, it means that you might spend some time alone in order to form a relationship that is true to you. It doesn't necessarily have to be 9 years. It can be as simple as, a year or so, and then you get to the new. But now this new is more sustainable for you. You're less giving yourself up for somebody. Okay, for some of y'all, if it's in the 7th, if you are the ascendant Scorpio or ascendant Libra, it's going to be a bit less about you and a bit more about them. Again, though, we will have the planets ruling Rahu with Ketu, so there is actually a place for balance. So you are rebalancing this relationship, and it can be a situation where the partner was making more money than you, and now you are making a bit more money or a lot more money than them, but they are catching up. So it's kind of like one party catches up with the other party, and you have this kind of power shift, and that changes your experience of the relationship, but making it a round experience where you're actually growing together. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It can mean for you that it's more time to focus and to get into the point, to the shoes of the partner. So it can literally mean the fact that you are now making more money than your partner in this time. Okay, for many women this happens. Okay, you meet a partner, maybe you are very young and you're just beginning in your life and he's investing in you, and then you grow and you grow your career and you grow this and you change your balance, and there's a bit of a crisis because the roles change, but then they're catching up, or you find a way to deal with that. I think what Beyonce did for Jay-Z with Tidal was a great example of how she made a lot of money, and then she helped out his business as an act of reconciliation, and kind of bailed him out as an act of reconciliation, and showing this affection in this way. It's like, hey, we've had this crisis. We're patching up this crisis. I understand what it was about. It was about me being that powerful that it begins to frighten. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to abuse. I'm not going to overpower you either. I'm just bailing you out like a friend does. And that was one great way to deal with that. If you talk about tidal. Um, and so for some of you that are ascendant Libra, ascendant Scorpio, that is what's happening. Okay, you've gained power in this relationship. Now you either make an act of kindness, or it doesn't necessarily mean you're bailing someone out. It can simply be that you're owning yourself and your sexuality from and your emotional needs from a new point of view. While it might be separation, it doesn't necessarily mean so. It's just that now you're walking in the shoes of your partner. Now you are the person who has more wealth or more wisdom, because maybe you innovated. If you're a scientist, maybe you've innovated in your field. You've learned from them, now you've innovated in your field. And now you're in his shoes. You're teaching him the tricks that you've learned. Okay? So this can also happen. And that can unnerve the relation a bit, but now you're walking in his shoes or in her shoes. Okay, now I've had this astrally where I was learning aromatherapy and I started channeling oils and I started channeling things, and then there are certain people or certain beings that were learning with me, and now they started doing things that I didn't think about, and they had a lot of talent doing that. Okay, and it was also the case when I was learning aromatherapy. And my instructor saw me as I began to channel oils and I began to channel things. And then I wanted to study reflexology, and she was also reflexology. She was like, "Why study reflexology?" So I was like, I was scared, and I was like, "There's no reason to. Like, I'm not your enemy. I'm actually very thankful and honoring your skills and your talent." So those situations also happen. Okay, seventh house does not necessarily, it can be ninth house, can be seventh house. It does not necessarily mean only romantic relationship, and even if it is, it can also mean that you're just balancing out certain things. And now you are standing in the shoes of your partner. Now you're the grown adult. Now you have the wisdom. Now you have the heads up to what's to be. And now it is your time to be kind with this power and not be abusive of it. So, hey, that's something that is happening. Um, so I want you to think about the 18-year cycle or the 17 years that you are wrapping as the Pluto Capricorn with a bit of Pluto Sag. Okay. I want you to also think about them as the Neptune in Pisces with a bit of Neptune in Aquarius. Okay. Big one. I want you to also think about them as, for some of you, it's going to signal a pivotal Uranus point, like you're having or have had your Uranus opposition, the Kundalini rise, and so on and so forth. But mainly, and think about where Uranus is heading. Okay, Uranus is in Taurus, heading Gemini. Where was Uranus 9 years ago? Okay, was in Aries. Where was Uranus 18 years ago? I don't remember. Okay. I don't remember. Probably it was in Capricorn already in 92, 90, something like that. And then it was probably in Aquarius. Maybe? I don't know. 18 years, so it goes about 8 years. Just 9 years. 8 years, so 18 years, it's going to be 2 cycles, so it's probably was in Pisces. 18 years ago, it's probably been between Aquarius and Pisces. And then we had the Neptune Uranus conjunction. Before that, we had the Pluto Uranus conjunction. So I want you to think about the cycle of the eclipses, because it's so related to the outer planets, as the cycles of the outer planets too. So what happened to you during Neptune? You're wrapping up the entire Neptune in Pisces before Neptune strikes Aries. So Neptune is heading Aries, Uranus is heading Gemini, and Pluto is just beginning Aquarius. Okay. Think about the outer planets in your relationship. This is how I started to do astrology. I started to do composite charts for people who did not have ascendant charts sometimes, or the ascendant of their partner. And I started to look at the outer planets to inner planets. What are your conflicts and how they are related to the zeitgeist? So when Pluto was in Capricorn, the conflicts you've had in your personal relationships were connected to the structure of the government, the structure of organizations that you are working at. Okay, and how that affected your ability to say yes, no, and maybe. Thank you, Tom Jacobs, for this saying yes, no, it may be at the right time. And Tom Jacobs is a great evolutionary astrologer, and also a great channeler and healer. So deep thank you for all of your teachings and the meditations that Tom shares online. He's having a Living with Saturn, I think it is webinar now, that is going to be very astrological, a bit less channeling, very astrological. That if I'll manage to take this, I will. Then I highly recommend that for those of you who are interested in how to deal with Saturn in a way that is different to what we've been taught or more evolutionary. So, um, the challenges that you've had to your relationships, okay, they were of the nature of Neptune in Pisces. Maybe there was addiction, maybe there was creative rights issue, or creativity, or maybe you saw, maybe your worldview was like, oh, in order to be a creative master, I need to be in miserable life and sadness and loss. Not necessarily. um, and I remember the big argument I had in 2007, that was still in the cycle of the eclipses on Aries, if I'm not mistaken, with the person that I had a weird dynamic with, and they were musicians, and I was also writing, and I said, I want to write out of joy. And they said, well, when I am joyous, then I don't write. I'm busy living my life. And then when I'm in crisis, then I write. And I said, no, I want to be creative also when I am in joy, not only when I am not at joy. So having this creativity um, around my life, and creativity not just as therapy and release and so on and so forth, but also creativity as celebrating the life and celebrating the joy of life. And that was the conflicting views that we had on art, okay, and being creative and creation. Um, so I can think back to then. And now the challenges that you are having are going to be of a Neptune Pisces, but also Neptune Aries. So think about as how do we assert ourselves, as using art to assert ourselves, using art to define ourselves, because Neptune is about this artistic, kind of dreamy, boundaryless art. So, I can think about sugar-free lemonades, the pros, the cons, the implications, how it had affected myself and people in my life. And so this ideation or disillusionment, but also the bridging of realities, of various realities, and how do we assert ourselves in the various planes. Um, how does that apply to you? Because up till now, you and your partner have been doing Neptune in Pisces, or you as a single person have been doing Neptune in Pisces. You're about to begin to do Neptune in Aries. And so the type of relationships that are going to break up or break through are going to be the relationships that will bring the stories that unfold in this outer planet's new journey. So Pluto in Aquarius, the power of the people, and how to use this power in a way that is actually benefic. Neptune in Aries, how to assert yourself using art, how to bridge between the spiritual in the physical, okay? Chitring. Um, and Uranus in Gemini, and then Cancer. how to liberate your social activities, how to liberate yourself through technology in a way that is actually liberating of the individual and of social movements, social rights, and Uranus in Cancer. That's very much how to liberate your emotional, how to liberate yourself as a mother or a father, okay, or how to liberate yourself as a caregiver, how to liberate caregiving or use technology to assist caregiving, birth giving, all that, how to liberate the motherland. Unfortunately, this is also one of the themes, okay? So, liberation of the motherlands. What do we see as liberation of the motherlands? Or maybe liberating ourselves of the concept of motherland. What is a promised land, right? Which Neptune in Aries is also going to deal with. What is a promised land? Okay, and everybody has their own answer for it. Um, and so what's unfolding now in your relations is meant to unfold the upcoming stories. And we've had 17 years of the previous stories. Um, that is what's so potent in this cycle. That is what's so revolutionary, and we are very much heading the Mars. And I want to upload it. Ah, I wanted to upload it during the Jupiter hour, but then if we go through the Mars, then we will be doing this all throughout the eclipse, and that would mean I would be posting it at the sun, at the hour of the sun. That would be 50 minutes, but already getting tired saying this. So, and this eclipse is ruled by Mars, and now I'm beginning to feel my energy drained. Okay, as we went through this Mars hour, my energy drained. The light is a bit diminishing, um, and we are really, really in the shade of, like, we're really amongst. For some of you, maybe you already see the eclipse. I mean, hopefully you don't look at it because it is strong energy, and if you don't know how to deal with this, unless you are this one of these you know, the Gödel point where you're like the part outside the group that is the proof that the group exists, so you are the exception that proves the rule. So unless you are this Gödel point, then you probably are not watching this eclipse. Um, but you can watch this video if you need a witness to get you through this time. So, a lot of emotional release, of energy that's been building up to be let go and shedded, shedding 17 years. We're shedding 18 years, but we're also shedding 17 years as the nodes, as the Rahu is about to go from Venus ruled to Mars ruled again. So, from letting go of unions or forming new unions to new initiations and asserting yourself, whether within a union or outside of it. And I want to go, if we are in Mars, I want to reiterate again, this is Ksenia Moore teaching about Mars in relations that I heard on Lala Duncheva's channel. And I go back to it time and time again. And now with Rahu about to go into Aries to their next eclipse cycle and get a ruling Mars, I want to reiterate it again. Even if you are a person with a womb, even if you are a cisgender woman, to be in a healthy relationship, partnership, coupleship, relations in general, working relationships. There you go. It's eclipse in the picture. It's not eclipse in me. No, no. Okay, because it's on my sun in Taurus. But no, I'm not being eclipsed. So, anyway, what I want to, or maybe I'll just turn on the light, which is, hey, there's something I can do about it without looking at. So I'm back with the use of technology. I'm not being eclipsed right now. This is so dramatic. Who knows if that is not the truth? So by the use of technology, I'm a light again. And this is, and we are thankful to electricity. Um, Gosh, this is so weird. So back to the teaching. This was magic. I don't know if it was astrological magic, but it was magic. Anyway, so as the light outside goes out and the light inside comes in, um, back to the Mars teaching, and the Mars teaching goes like this by Ksenia Moore. No matter what you have between your legs, do your Mars. Why? Because let's say you are a woman and you have Mars like me in Scorpio. Okay. And you may find it difficult to relate to your aggression and to set boundaries because, like I say, when I was setting boundaries, it looked like the United States after Pearl Harbor. So from going from splendid isolation into boom, boom, boom. Um, and that was something that I had to connect with, that I had to tend to, um, and to do my Mars, because it's not about ignoring my Mars. It's not about and being more feminine or practice your femininity. Whether you're a man or a woman, it's important for all of us to have our more whatever you call feminine or not call feminine, because like whenever I say something like this, I remember Hawk saying that she wants to, I don't know, burst into anger whenever she sees somebody talk about receptivity as feminine. I was like, okay, yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to say it. And this is very true. Like it's a very true enlightenment. I just don't know how to say it otherwise. It's just like no matter what gender you are, you want to do your Mars, you want to do your Venus, you want to do you want to do all your planets basically. And the thing is that when you act your Mars out, okay, for me it is like advocating for people who have various belief systems or who see the world differently, or just doing my ninth house. When you are doing your Mars, then you are asserting yourself, you are tending to this part of you are setting boundaries, and the result of that is that you have better relationships that are more authentic to you, and are more in alignment with who you really are. So sometimes if you are more of the go, go, go type, whether you're a man or a woman or both, then it's about doing Venus more and allowing things to come to you more. And sometimes it's difficult. Let's say you have natal Venus in a Mars sign or in Aries, then you tend to go, go, go. You tend to make it happen when it comes to relationships or to intimating with others. And sometimes it's about allowing things to come to you as well. While sometimes that is about actually asserting yourself, actually going after. Mars is your drive in life. So going after what you dream, going after your dreams and goals, going after doing what you love. That is very beneficial, both from a Jupiter perspective of developing your world, your spiritual world. And for a Jupiter teaching, I actually like to honor. Uh, yeah. Okay, so there's the guy who speaks about surviving narcissistic relationships for men. Okay, so men who are survivors of narcissistic relationship. Again, I have his face. Richard. I know his name is Richard. Is that Richard? Ah, damn. I have, I have his face in front of me. He's a Pisces. I don't remember. Anyway, so yeah, and what he's teaching was for men that was actually quoting Jordan Peterson. And even though there's a lot I disagree with both these men, but I also honor their contribution to the world of what they do in favor of humanity, and that was growing your mindset, like growing your own moral set of values, growing your values. And Venus for the man is a spouse, and Venus is values, and Jupiter is your worldview. So growing a philosophy, a life philosophy, is contributing to your being a better man and to attracting a better woman if that's what you're looking for, or a better man. So for women, improving upon Jupiter is growing your spirituality and doing what you enjoy, okay, the sense to do good. And doing your Venus is also your value, it's self-value, and doing Mars, which is Ksenia Moore's teaching, is about embracing your drive in life. Don't be afraid to be a man. Okay, it's like even if you do go by this very stereotypical or sexist division of feminine masculine, don't be afraid to be a man, because it's not going to make you less attractive. It's going to make you more authentic, and it's going to make your relationship stand up to your standards, or else it's like you're either supportive and nourishing of me, my life path, my body, my spirit, my health, my well-being, or you're out of my life. These are the two options. There's no third option here that's good for us. And sometimes Mars is very good in doing that. Mars is very good at recognizing where something is black or white, and it has to be done with. Okay, Mars is exceptionally good at severing ties for good when that's what needs to happen. Okay, so when you learn to do your Mars, you are improving upon your relationships. Mars in Cancer can be about doing that in relation to your emotional well-being. If anybody tells you how to feel, they're not the one, even if that's your therapist. Okay? Not that it's something that for my private life, actually not, but it's just like for the betterment of humanity. It's like it can happen to people that they go to therapy and the therapist tells them how they feel. It's not therapy. Not good for you. Then you search yourself, you break out of it. Um, what else is here? And in this respect, you still have to go back to the notes. Go back 18 years ago. What were you making up or breaking up on 18 years ago? And how has that evolved today? What were you protecting emotionally 18 years ago? How has that evolved today? So for some people, it's going to be about life bringing, caregiving, severing ties, unionizing, or whatnot. Unionizing, if it's labor, then can also be that. Private sector, social benefits, all these things. Um, yeah, I'm probably not going to do the Mars the whole way through now, because it is very energy diminishing to talk about the planet that is both in fall right now and ruled by Keto and ruling Keto. Um, yeah, 13 hours of the day. And we are really, really on the eclipse. Let's see if I can pass you through the entire eclipse point, so that you can, yeah. Okay. We really had an eclipse point and really feeling from where I am, it's Mars hour, but it's also getting into the evening. Um, in this eclipse live. So I really feel it in my energy. It's like this, oh, letting go. Um, but I still want to get you through to the eclipse point if I can. So Moon, 14 degrees Scorpio, 25 minutes. Sun in Taurus, 14 degrees, 55 minutes. Then we have a couple of more minutes to the eclipse on the minute. And we're heading towards the Sun hour. So we're going from the Mars hour to the Sun hour. The Sun is in Taurus, so it is in the sign where Ketu is. Mercury is separating from the conjunction with the Sun. The Sun is applying to Uranus, so this eclipse is applying to Uranus as well. A lot of fortune is in 19 degrees Taurus, and which is also being applied by the Moon in this eclipse. So um, world events. Should I look at the news? At this point, I don't know. With Mercury retrograde marking this eclipse, this means that the entire 6 months from now are going to be stamped, and to some degree the entire. Okay. The stamp of Mercury retrograde on an eclipse. So, misguided information can accompany the eclipse cycle. And this does mean 6 months, 9 years, 18 years. Okay, Mercury retrograde, it means we're not getting the full picture of something. So, as we are aligning, we must remember that certain information is missing, and there is a fated misguided information potential. Fated misguided information potential that we might only see in 18 years. Or sooner, we're going to see the bits and bits sooner. We're going to see some bits being exposed as Mercury turns direct. We're going to see some bits being exposed with upcoming Mercury direct touching this point. Okay, so upcoming Mercury in Taurus. We're going to see this when this is triggered, when something triggers the eclipse point, then some information is going to be restored or some information is going to change. We're going to see this coming up. It's like a piece of information that keeps coming up, being viewed upon, being looked at differently from various points of view. We're going to see that in about 9 years with Ketu in Taurus. And so this Ketu in Taurus, there will be something that we'll be letting go of, and there's some sort of information or knowledge about technology that's related to that. We will be letting go of in 9 years, and then in 18 years, we will be, or 17 years, we will be wrapping up our tending to those pieces of information. With Mercury retrograde, while the full moon that is eclipsing is basically like, it can also be an eclipse of information. Something is being exposed, but something is still missing for the full picture to arise. Somebody cannot tell all the details. I know that we are now also in pivotal mundane times, so that can be also related to the war and conflict. Certain details about the war, like the Ukrainian war, that we don't know, that people cannot talk about, that people cannot expose, and we will be looking at them in the coming 18 years or so. When the eclipse cycle also touches Aries, it's going to be a mark of 50 years because of Chiron. And this brings me back to Pearl Harbor. The pilots that were dropping the bombs, the nukes, they were silent for 50 years. They were silenced for 50 years. They couldn't talk to anyone. They couldn't even talk amongst themselves about what happened. Can you imagine that? Okay, that's an imploding A-bomb. And think about how much ideation people had to Pearl Harbor because they couldn't talk about these things. We didn't have the actual testimonials of the pilots who dropped, the atomic veterans. So we didn't have an appraisal of all the points of view around dropping the bombs. And so that was highly idealized at that time. United States went from splendid isolation to nuking whoever is trying to break the peace and conquering, like half of the world. And so there was high ideation of this weapon, okay, that was considered very humanistic at the time because it was kind of like the guillotine. It was a quick mass death that is for the people who are within the spectrum of certain degrees from the bomb, humane as they just poof, they just poof. They don't even feel it. But then as you grow up the range, then it's not as humane, and it is also mass destruction. So right now, we are having with this eclipse cycle in Aries, unfortunately, on a mundane level, similar events where certain people will, or certain, in this case, certain people will not be able to speak about it for 50 years until Chiron matures. Chiron maturation is age 50. And this one is beyond big. Okay, when a person turns 50, they have a time to heal certain aspects of themselves that were not being tended to, and they can be more authentically themselves more than ever. Again, it varies from person to person, and you also have other components in your chart, like, sati sati, alongside, the right after the Chiron return, and then it's like, okay, you've just healed something big about yourself, and you're entering this maturation that, the resilience that's being asked from you is almost inhumane at the same time. Like those things happening, or for me, it was like being homeless while Jupiter was in my first house. So it was kind of like this bounty of joyous experiences alongside not having a physical home that I can be in. Um, but all in all, Chiron maturation is at the age 50. Chiron takes 50 years to go around the zodiac. And so for the cycle with Rahu in Aries, there is a 50-year cycle of something that will only be able to be sorted out 50 years from now. Intended to 50 years from now. So there is a wound present. Okay? And this is a cycle where even though you begin the new, there is healing associated with it, and whatever begins this time carries the mark of of Chiron in Aries. For me, it's the second house. Okay, and so whatever begins this time, this next year, is carrying the Chiron in Aries that can only be tended to 50 years from the beginning of whatever you begin. Okay, so there are certain things, even around this eclipse, this time, the exposures that we get, still there are things that cannot be said. So many things are said, still there is information missing, still there is information or misinformation, misguided information, not necessarily lies or gaslighting, but more like a certain type of what we are able to communicate, literally so, in a very real way, what we are able to communicate right now is not the entire picture, both because we don't see the entire picture and both because there are certain limitations. And with this sextile to Saturn in Pisces, there are certain limitations. We might be protecting something, we might want to give longevity to something, we might want to let go of certain things that had longevity in our lives. And so our words are of Venus nature. They're open. Okay, Venus and Gemini. They are sharing their emotions, and Venus is sextile in this Chiron, in this Jupiter. They are optimistic, they are comforting, and they are resilient. Okay, with this Venus trine in the eclipse and trine in the moon, they're very resilient, emotionally resilient. That being said, there are things that still cannot be expressed with words here. Something this, and there is also things that you cannot read into just yet. And you might be able to read into in for the Taurus part, it might be soon that you will be able to read into, but there are also things that you will be looking at 18 years from now and seeing things differently, because only in 18 years will you be able to tackle that. Or will the circumstances, and this can be on a mundane level, the mundane circumstances will allow that you will be able to tackle that. Okay, something is, and as we are heading to the nodes and to Rahu being ruled by Mars and with Chiron there, um, there is going to be huge transformation, huge healing, and yet Chiron matures at 50. So the full circle of that will not be before 18 years from Rahu arriving at Aries, and an extra 30 years until Chiron matures for whatever you start there. Let's say you start a business. Okay, so let's say 50 years after you started the business, Chiron matures, and there is something that you were tackling, some wound that you couldn't address that now you can address in the business. Let's say you're starting the relationship, then it can kind of be like you were two young, lovely people beginning a relationship, and then your 50th anniversary, there is something that you can celebrate that you couldn't celebrate before. Some exciting new personality thing that you have been trying to heal all along, and maybe at the 18-year cycle you've been letting go of something, or you wrapped something, and then you live for another 30 years maybe together, and then you reach a certain maturation, a certain authenticity in your character where you just love each other in a whole new way. Okay, can that mean breakups? Can that mean difficulties? Can that mean long time step for Chiron? Yes, Chiron is always going to be there in any chart of any new beginning. So while I wouldn't necessarily make Aries the ascendant for an electional chart, sometimes that's just what's going to happen. Okay, Chiron was in Aries, I believe, when I started my business. And now there are things that need to be healed or need to be addressed, and accessibility to neurodivergent people and all kind of things. So those things are also carrying a 50-year stamp. So we have 18-year stamp, and as we address Chiron, we also have a 50-year stamp. On a mundane level, it means that there are certain things that are going to happen in the world that people will not be able to reveal their experience, the true nature of what happened before 50 years has passed. So while that doesn't sound too positive, it is also a part of the story. So at least knowing that we don't know. And we are very, very close. We are only 20 minutes, okay, on the minute here from the exact on the minute eclipse, and 25 minutes from sun hour. Yeah, so Chiron was the next thing to say, the next live insight to say. And funny enough, when I was addressing Chiron, even though it's ruled by Mars, because it's heading where Rahu is, I was feeling more energized by tending to the other pole, even if it is Chiron. And I kind of look at Jupiter here. And Jupiter squares Pluto. Pluto is long-term changes, so certain changes about our worldview, our religion, the way we see Jupiter, our spiritual practices, all these things that are having this fate to change. Oh, and what I am seeing is the beginning of the T-square with Mars, Jupiter, Pluto. And this T-square will perfect at around the end of May, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember quite, but we are already in the degrees, the applying degrees. We're already within the T-square. And as you can see, this T-square is being resolved in 27 degrees Libra, which is around Spica. So yes, Spica might be useful. Working with Spica, tending to Spica, speak up, okay, speaking up, words that heal, circumstances, situations, speaking up. And so speaking up is highly important, and yet Mercury is retrograde. Okay, so there's the need to speak up, and there are certain things that still cannot be said. The speaker is with Ketu. And the resolution for this T-square is about letting go of this Venus type of Spica. And I talked about purging diplomacy a lot. Ethereal astrology literally said that it's not a time to be diplomatic, it's time to assert yourself even if it angers people. So we are heading towards this type of speaking up that is asserting ourselves and tending to ourselves, speaking up for ourselves and advocating for ourselves. And so, with this Jupiter, it's at the T square, it's the T spot, and Jupiter is going to enter Taurus. And it's going to touch on the North Node. A lot of people have been talking about the ingress of Jupiter into Taurus. Um, and I guess the hours here are not correct. We perhaps are at the Jupiter hour because I'm beginning to talk about Jupiter. So we may be at the Jupiter hour in the evening. And right now it is Friday evening. So the evening is of Mars. So it's a Mars evening. And I guess the first hour was Mars. And now we are having a Jupiter hour. I guess. Probably. I don't know. Because it is dark outside and I'm talking about Jupiter. So I'm talking about this T square, and it's Jupiter again in the evening. And what we are heading to from this eclipse is perfecting this T square. Very potent T square, as Jupiter will be ingressing into Taurus, so it will be 0 degrees Taurus, and Mars will be ingressing into Leo. So Earth, air, and fire. Now it's water, fire, and air. It's going to be earth, air, and fire. And that 0, 0, 0 degree, the 0 degree, so T square on the 0 degrees, 0 degrees, as you know, is one of the important degrees. I call it carnal because it's igniting something new. It's a complete new beginning. That is also, unfortunately, and I don't mean doom and gloom here, but this is also, this ingress is a complete new conflict, okay, on a mundane level. So, complete new conflict to do with leaders, the people, and the land, and finances and banks, and also women, because Venus, like Jupiter is going to be ruled by Venus, that's going to be ruling Ketu. Okay? So there is a whole new conflict on the 000 T square of Mars, Pluto, Jupiter that we are heading to. And as we are talking about this eclipse, we basically are solving this eclipse in the 0 degrees Scorpio, where my Pluto is, retrograde for me. So the Scorpio point where Rahu still is, where Ketu still is the resolution, which brings us back to Mars, which brings us back to Leo. So there are going to be new leaders, and there are new beliefs about land, involving finances, involving women, new philosophies of connection, relationships, values, assets, beauty, new standards, and we are beginning a whole new story that is connected to this eclipse. Okay, so we're beginning a whole new chapter, a whole new story with this T square on the 0 degrees. Now we had an eclipse that was on 0 degrees Aries. Okay, we had an eclipse, and we had an eclipse that was on the 29th degree of Aries, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and the 29 degrees of Aries eclipse, which is the anaretic degree, so very premonitional degree, a graduational degree, and the squaring of Pluto in the 0 degrees. So Pluto is looking 348 years forward, while Well, Aries was looking 18 years back. Okay. And now we're going to be looking at 340 um, years forward. So is the T square going to be with the 000? I'm sorry, I have to check this. So I'm going to go to the monthly astro calendar because I could be wrong about the degrees of the T square, and I want to look at the T square. This is Moon, Mercury, Mars. Mars square Pluto, Mars oppositions Pluto's May 21. Is Pluto already? I think Pluto will be retrograding. No! It's the 000. Jupiter is already in 1 degree. Okay? So this opposition is highly important. There is a whole new beginning for the mundane level, and this whole new beginning is marked by, unfortunately, crisis point, and there is a whole new conflict. Okay, it's a whole new conflict at the 0 degrees. My prediction also concerning religion, concerning leaders, the relations between religion and the state, relation between religion, land, state, people, technology. All of that is going to go through transformation, and we're entering a whole new conflict. And I want to use the word conundrum for that, because a conflict is a conundrum. And also scientifically, we're entering the age of a whole new scientific conundrum. Okay, if we talked about the democration question of science, now we're heading to different questions that are going to be asked by science, different conundrums altogether, different questions that we're going to ask ourselves in relation to religion and the state and the land and the people and the masses and technology and science. Whole new questions are going to pop up. I'm not going to do the whole, trying to go back to when we previously saw this, because I might. On the 0 degree, okay, this is, I'm getting tired. But this is a part of May astrology, and there's a whole new conundrum that we're heading to, and the sun will be in 29 degrees of Taurus, separated from Algol, applying to my Chiron, thank you very much. Um, and the anaretic degree of Taurus. So the questions will be involving finances, involving beauty, philosophy of beauty, involving land, borders. Here, this is the Saturn term of Taurus, if I'm not mistaken. And this is borders on land. Leaders, their rulership of kingdom on land. I think about Napoleon, his approach to conquering, his approach to the army. So the army has to be well fed. Okay, but here we have this interesting sorry, Mars is not ruling Taurus. We have this interesting sextile between the 29 degrees Taurian sun and the 0 degrees Mars in Leo. So there is armed forces that determine certain relations on land, and there can also be this can also mark a Napoleon leader. I didn't do the chart of Napoleon Bonaparte, and what Napoleon Bonaparte was very much into is the notion that the people who fight for him and for his kingdom have to be well fed. Okay, and so here with this Mars in Leo and the sun in Taurus, that can mark a leader that has a certain relation to food, to land, and to fight for the land. So army, armed soldiers working for the king, working for the queen, and these armed soldiers, because of the sextile to the sun, they can be very well fed, very well nourished, or these soldiers are going to be given land. Okay, so this is a leader like Napoleon. And this leader like Napoleon like leader, and these soldiers, because they're so well fed and they're given lands, this is in conflict with the people here. That is like what is the power of the people and what can the people do? So these soldiers here, it's like Napoleon Bonaparte. It's like the soldiers are happy to serve the king because yes, they fight, but they get land, they get prosperity, and they get food. And with the sun on the 29 degrees and in the Saturn degree, it can be certain long term, even Pluto like long term, because Pluto is ruled by Saturn, that these soldiers might be given people to rule. These soldiers might be given land that is theirs forever and after. These soldiers might be given agriculture. These soldiers might be very well fed. Okay, so what we are dealing with is a whole new conundrum where the king is feeding the soldiers well. And these soldiers might also be of Venus type. They can be women. Okay, can be practical women that are where's Venus? Venus in Cancer on my moon. Separating from my moon, degree from my moon. So Venus in Sirius. So there can be actually when I look at this sun, it can be a leader that um, and with this trine to Pluto, there can be an actual leader, an actual sun that is of the nature of Sirius in the sense that they embrace diversity, they feed the army, and they tend to the people. This can be such a leader. I'm looking at this chart and I'm shocked. Okay? If you think about the French Revolution, between the French Revolution and democracy in France, there was kingship, there was Napoleon Bonaparte, there was a lot of stuff, okay, including the Second World War. It's the First and Second World War. Before we could say France is democratic. Um, so here Taurus is Taurus ruled in the sun that is closest that I know of. I don't know the Ukrainian sun. I don't remember. Israel sun is 23, I think, degrees Taurus, or 22. So it's closer to Algol. So Israeli sun is literally on Algol, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and that is quite interesting a time, pivotal time for Israel. It's how can Israel's sun be on Algol? Didn't they have a solar return on like, yeah. Anyway, that's weird, but I don't remember. Um, so I don't know. I don't think necessarily Israel, but some place that is Taurus ruled, somebody Taurus ruled. Um, it can be a woman, okay, and if it's so, it's a woman that's of a Saturn nature, so she's very practical, kind of like a big, we had Golda Meir, but Golda Meir was like she had problems doing she had problems being Minister of Defense because the men were hiding information from her, and so she couldn't get the right decisions. And then she was being blamed for being not competent. Well, in fact, she was facing the same problems any person would face if they would not be given the right the information that they need to make a decision. So, but this case, I don't necessarily see it here. Mercury is direct. This case, I actually see a very potent leader that is in alignment with the changes that are happening with Pluto and Aquarius retrograde, that is coming in the times where the people are misusing their power, or when the people are given power, and this leader is strengthening the people, their power is or is filling up the gap for when people are not using their power correctly. And this is people, this is not regime. Pluto is in Aquarius retrograde. This is where people have misused their power and they need to reiterate, or they need to take the power back, but from the people, not from the regime anymore. Okay, we're done with Pluto in a Capricorn in this time. Okay, we will still have it because we are about to retrograde into it, but Pluto in Aquarius, we're not dealing with Pluto in Capricorn, we're dealing with Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, so this Pluto retrograde is not about taking my power back from the regime, it's taking my power back from giving it to the people. And this particular figure is filling in that blank in a way that supports the people, the way that is matured around land, around food, about relation to women, that is having the support of a certain army, certain soldiers, that is highly performative, royal, um, king adorned, and even worshipped. Like these soldiers are not the soldiers you're going to hear about in the news having CPTSD that much, but these soldiers are facing the people. Okay, so there's a conflict between the armed soldiers and the people, that this leader has the potential to mend, resolve, ease, but this leader, okay, the sun is separating from a square with Saturn. Okay, so there are going to be longevity to certain conflicts that this person mends. And if I look at Jupiter and the beginning degrees, it's going to be in 0 degrees too. Um, so Mars is going to be in the 29 degrees of Cancer, and Jupiter is going to be. Let's animate this chart a bit. I want to look at this a bit more. So animation, chart animation. I'll just go all the way down, and we have chart animation. I want to animate this a day backwards. And yes, as I predicted, so Jupiter is perfecting its square to Pluto as Mars is in the anaretic degree of Cancer. So think about the army protecting the motherland maturing up, because now the army that's protecting the motherland has conflict with the people. And then one day forward, a leader snaps in. There's a new leading emerges that is mitigating the tension. Okay, so the army has matured to allow and give certain power to the leader that mends the relations with the people. But you must remember that the sun that's governing this leader, the sun in this election, is going to go forward into a relation of and in conjunct with Pluto. Okay, so this leader will be good for that time, but there is a whole cycle between the sun and Pluto. But if there is an election at this time and this leader is elected at this time, this leader is not going to rely so much, it's going to mitigate the conflict of religion, Jupiter, the people, okay, and the armed forces. So we have the people, the king, and the army having this a pivotal conundrum that the king or queen or leader mitigates. The army is at odds with the people, and the army that's protecting the motherland is at odds with the people. I'm going to release this episode now because I have 1%, and there is this unique leader that is mitigating this very much by separating from religion, by having a spirituality, is a sextile, by artistic spirituality that is separated from religion. Is a spiritual person, but not a religious person. I'm gonna deliver this episode right